Now let's talk about why use CSS at all. CSS, it has the ability to really streamline your web pages and make them look much better, and they also will act much better. So the first reason in why using CSS is that it's going to make your markup more maintainable. And basically, it just is not going to include the complexity in the code aspect of, you're not going to need the complexity in the code aspect of your page to be able to deliver the same sort of look and feel. And I have two examples right here. I have just a little search box that I made. This is a basic search box right here. And here is my second example. They do look very similar. And I tried to make them, look as similar as possible. But if we look under the hood and look at the code, you'll see that there's quite a difference in the code. So I'm going to come to this example first, which is just using straight HTML. I'm going to go up here to View in Firefox, and I'm going to view my page source. And it's going to open up my page source. So here is the page source of our first example. And you can see it's a bunch of HTML tags, and there is formatting that is attached to many of those tags. So I'm just going to go ahead and make my window a little bit more narrow so we can look side by side at our next example. Here is the next search box, which basically is using mostly CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and open the source for this CSS version of the same exact thing, and you can see how much more streamlined, how much less code is involved in making something that looks exactly the same. So this in itself, this is just a little small snippet of code, but it's letting you know how much you can cut the back-end programming down by using CSS. So here I have a bunch of table tags that are formatting the boxes that contain the various elements that I have in the search box. I have formatting that's attached to my font to make it look a specific way, to make it be a specific size. I have a lot of background color, table spacing, margins, all kinds of stuff that's attached. Here I just have straight XHTML code. I just have the straight tags and basically the code. So this is basically where the body tag starts and opens. And you can see, if we count these, in between the body I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tags, 7 lines of code. Whereas here, I probably have at least that much code. If we come over here and look at what's in between our body tags, and even looking at the body tag, look how much more information is in the body tag in this example as opposed to our CSS example. So you can see that if we were to measure, we're cutting our code at least in half, if not down more, like, it's 25% lighter, 30% lighter at least in the CSS example. So it definitely allows you to make your web pages much more simple and much more maintainable. So the next thing is it makes the pages smaller, and we just saw that. You saw how much smaller the pages are, and smaller pages basically translate into faster loading pages. So if on an average, if you use CSS, you're going to have about a 50% reduction in document size, which, in the whole scheme of things in a website, that definitely adds up. And that in turn is going to make your site load much faster. So the smaller the page is, the faster it's going to come in. Because CSS is using less code, it makes the overall file size smaller, and in turn it allows it anyways to load more quickly onto your visitor's browser. It helps with search engine optimization. And this might sound a little funny. It's not like a magic pill that's going to make your site, get top ranking in Google, but it certainly can help. If you are properly using CSS, it can definitely help boost your site in the rankings, even just a little bit, but every little bit counts, especially when we're dealing with search engines. So that can definitely be a reason in itself to use CSS. The next reason, number 5, is it is based on web standards, easier to make it more accessible. This is becoming more and more important in today's you know, with the designers of today, because basically we have a responsibility to make our site accessible. We really have to meet legal requirements according to the American with Disability Act, and CSS allows you to make your site accessible. If you go and you confirm that your code is good, which is actually number 10. I'm skipping around a little bit here. But if you are going to use some sort of validation service for your web page, if you're using XHTML and CSS, you will rarely have problems in validating, which in turn is going to ensure that your site is accessible to all users. Number 6, you can distribute content more easily. This has to do with distributing it to users that might be using other types of media. So maybe they're on a handheld device or a screen reader, or some other way of viewing your website than a standard browser that you're using on your computer. So that definitely allows you to distribute it. And that also kind of ties in with number 7, able to deliver to multiple user agents. This allows you to make sure that the same piece of marked up content is delivered to a variety of browsers and other devices as well. Cell phones, PDAs, digital assistants, text readers for the sight impaired, and all you basically have to do is make a separate style sheet for each of these different agents, and you can use the same exact page. Websites that use CSS are going to serve all browser agents. With very little effort, you can have your pages degrade nicely in older browsers so that the viewer gets the best experience possible with the available technology. And that's important too, because a lot of times you're not going to know what type of browser your user is using. CSS also allows you to separate content from presentation. This is very important, and it's basically a way that you can modify or entirely change your web page by just, and we talked about this in one of the previous movies, like changing your clothes, by just changing the CSS. So you don't have to affect the actual structure of your site, and you are able to still change the look. And then, of course, confirming your code is good, and we already talked about this as far as validating that your code is good. So these are just several reasons of why you should use CSS. I can't really think of any reasons that you wouldn't want to use CSS, because it just has so many positive benefits to your website. The last reason is probably just because of building for the future. If you're developing a website that you want to last, or even preparing yourself to be more marketable, if you are developing with standards and keeping on top of technology, that's going to make you more valuable as a web developer, and it certainly is going to make your site last a lot longer if it is staying up to today's standards.